This happened around 10 years ago, give or take about a year. Just found out about this subreddit and thought it was worth posting. My friend Craig and I made plans to go hang out with our friend Jeremy and his new girlfriend. Neither of us had to work the next day, so we grabbed some beers and made our way to Jeremy's mom's apartment complex, where Jeremy was temporarily staying. When we got there, we went out into the woods behind the apartment complex to drink. This wasn't just a little patch of trees, but a good-sized patch of forest. For context, this was in New York State. It was a nice fall day late afternoon, and the sun was still out. We finished the beers and decided to go get more. So we go to the store and get some more beer, head back to the apartments and enter the woods. This was autumn and the light outside was right at that stage where it starts to very quickly fade. We underestimated how dark it would be once we were in the woods, and how fast the light was fading away. We planned on making a fire but didn't really count on it being so dark when we got back. So we're walking into this sort of clearing area, from where we can choose to head off in a few different directions. We're having a good time, laughing, talking, but something not too far in the distance catches my eye. It's too dark to tell, but I swear I can see a very large figure. No, that's too big. It's probably a tree or just your eyes messing with you. So as Jeremy is gabbing in the background, I ask Craig as an aside if he can see something standing up ahead. And he's like, "Nah, where?" "Oh wait, there." "Oh crap." We were still walking and it was becoming clear I wasn't seeing things. There was a very large person standing in the forest up ahead, apparently facing us. So I try to get Jeremy's attention without cluing the big guy in that we've noticed him, just in case something sketchy is going on, which I get the serious feeling there is. We tell Jeremy there's a person up ahead, but Jeremy is in a jovial, no-chill state and he exclaims, "Holy hell, is that Bigfoot?" We humor him and laugh, but it's clear to Craig and I that this is actually creepy and probably not a safe situation, and it's clear that Jeremy is not understanding that. It's hard to communicate the pacing of our approach onto the guy, but essentially we had gotten too close not to acknowledge him. Partially because it took us a moment to get Jeremy's attention, and partially because we weren't trying to just turn around and run like we were scared. There were 4 of us and one of him after all. But this was a big guy, not supernaturally big or anything, and not like he was jacked or anything like that. Just a naturally gigantic dude, very tall and heavy without being particularly fat. And he was just standing there, in the middle of the forest, in the dark, alone. So as we approach this guy and just sort of say hello, Jeremy, the absolute fool that he was, gets way too close into this guy's personal space, as he enthusiastically tells him about how scary he looks standing in the woods alone. "We thought you were an alien or something, bro. I thought you were gonna jump up and bleog." Jeremy mimes an extra set of teeth coming out of his mouth like a xenomorph from the Alien vs. Predator movies, all up in this guy's face. To be clear, Jeremy is not trying to be intimidating or a jerk in any way. He is trying to be friendly and joking around with this guy. But he is literally leaning into this dude and practically sticking his hands in his face with his impression of an alien. Did I mention Jeremy was kind of a moron? Jeremy was kind of a moron. Love you, Jeremy, you were kind of a moron. And Jeremy's poor girlfriend, who was a few years younger than us and very shy, was clearly terrified, to which Jeremy was also oblivious. So Craig and I are both standing here kind of trying to brainstorm a way out of this situation. Jeremy is clearly too dense to get it. If we say that we have to go, he'd be like, "What? We just got here, aren't we having a fire?" and we were trying to seem confident and in control of the situation. Big guy says, "Oh, you guys are drinking. I got some drinks too." And he walks over to the tree line where he has a bag laying beside a tree. He reaches in the bag, and while he grabs a beer with one hand, he sort of sneakily pulls something else out with his other hand and places it into his hoodie pocket. I'm convinced it was a knife or a gun, probably a knife in all honesty. He then reapproaches us and cracks open his beer. I glance around casually, and then I notice something else. Somebody else is out here. There's someone moving along the tree line to our left, a relatively good distance away, but somebody else is here and they're circling around as if to come up behind us. Screw this, I need to leave now. So I go. Well, I gotta work in the morning and Craig's driving me home, so we gotta get out of here. Jeremy, in his infinite wisdom, responds, "What? You said you didn't have to work tomorrow." I facepalm so hard on the inside. "No, Jeremy, you must have misheard me, man. I said I do have to work tomorrow." And Jeremy, proving there is no end to his wisdom, says, "All right, guys, well, it was nice hanging with you. Get home safe." He wasn't leaving the woods with us. Craig and I started walking away, and I told him about the other person circling to get behind us and that we needed to move. We start trying to brainstorm a way to get Jeremy and his girlfriend out of there, and decide to call him and tell him that his mom was out in the parking lot looking for him. Jeremy is terrified of his mom, Craig explains to me, and this should work. Because we clearly couldn't just call him and tell him the situation was not safe without him blurting out, "This guy isn't sketchy, I feel totally safe." Jeremy was very mad at us for lying about his mom. I think his girlfriend appreciated it though. I'm not sure what was going on there that night. I've talked to several people about it over the years, and there are a few different ideas. Did they know we were coming back? Were they waiting for us? Or did we stumble into something we weren't meant to? Almost everyone I tell about this says, "You guys just accidentally interrupted a drug deal." But something about that just doesn't seem right. Who does a drug deal in the middle of the woods at night? I don't know. Very possibly just a homeless dude with no ill intention, and another homeless dude with no ill intention. But it was a very creepy and scary situation, and I just thought I would share. There are sadly lots of stories I could tell, but I'm going to focus on the creepy memory this sub uncovered for me. In high school, I was a band nerd. During the time of this story, I was a sophomore, 15-year-old female, and was on my second year as a majorette. I had previously played an instrument, but found my way to a baton at some point. Because the band was pretty well respected, we often had music majors from the local college interning with our band director. This year we had 3, a 20-something woman working with the flag line, a 24-year-old guy working with the drum line, and a 25-year-old guy working as an assistant band director intern. They started working with our groups at the end of the summer during band camp, so we became somewhat familiar with them fairly early into the year. That is how the whole band knew that the flag intern and the band director intern were actually engaged to be married. As teens do, we thought it was super romantic. Not long after the start of the school year, the band director intern was already trying to be cool with all the teens, joking around and being relatable. I can't remember his last name, but his first name was Brian. Red flag number 1 probably. Overall, he seemed charming and safe in a very stereotypical nerd kind of way. Plus, his fiancée was always nearby. I started to feel a mixture of special and uncomfortable when Brian began focusing a little more attention on me specifically. At first, I wrote it off as him choosing to speak to me as the majorette captain. A bit of a near-peer authority position, my 15-year-old brain reasoned. The discomfort started to become squirmy when he offered me his phone number if I ever needed anything. I knew for certain that he hadn't offered this to other section leads, so this was a choice that singled me out. After that point, things rapidly moved into a place that made me feel less special and more targeted. It is hard to remember a lot of the specifics. I have vague memories of avoiding him on away game bus rides and asking why Tanya, the fiancée, wasn't riding on the same bus. More vagueness around avoiding him during and after practices, feeling a little cornered at times, and eventually outright declining some kinds of romantic invitations. I can't remember when he started mentioning how pretty I was, or how I needed to be careful wearing such short practice shorts. I do remember dreading the first time I had to wear our skimpy majorette uniform with him around. Previous experience, aforementioned sad stories, had taught me not to be quiet about this. I started by jokingly alerting friends about the escalating, focused attention, then by telling my then senior class sister that he was saying increasingly creepy and inappropriate things. It was only a few days after I told my sister that the last incident with Brian occurred. A few times during the weeks of band camp, he had offered to give me a ride home. I always declined. It was unnecessary, but also previous experience. So I knew I had never given him an address or directions to my very rural house, which is why it was the height of scary and creepy when his car pulled up beside me one Saturday as I was walking down the road in front of my house. We would often walk down our wooded county road when the weather was nice. Alarm bells clanging, I curtly asked him what he was doing there. He claimed he was just in the area, highly unlikely given it was a residential-only, very rural, hard-to-find area. I asked if he knew this was where I lived, and he surprisingly admitted he did. Backing away from the road into the grassy, tree-lined ditch, I remember consciously not smiling. I flatly responded, "No, please go," when he offered me a ride. Not wanting to give any indication of where my house was, I moved further into the tree cover and began walking away. Thankfully, my grandfather was an old-school tech head, so I had a bulky cell phone in my pocket. I immediately dialed my sister's cell and filled her in. Bless her, she was revving the 1982 engine of her 280Z hatchback for all it was worth when she pulled up. Creepy Brian had been slowly cruising back and forth along the strip of county road where I had camouflaged myself in the trees. As soon as I heard my sister's engine, I headed back towards the road where I found her stopped in the oncoming traffic lane, shouting through her lowered passenger window at this grown man. Her face in that moment is etched into my memory. I immediately felt safer. Remembering that look still makes me feel warm and secure. I gave his car a wide berth as my sister moved forward to give me access to the passenger door. Pulling a three-pointer, she again stopped by his car and let him know she would call the school, the police, the university, and my grandfather if he didn't turn his happy ass right around and get the hell off our road. We followed his car back to the highway and watched him drive far enough away to be comfortable before we went back home. She and I both reported all of the creepy, questionable behavior to the band director and school officials. She had connections in the music department of the university, musical prodigy, long story, and reported him there also. He did not return to my high school, and as far as I am aware, did not graduate from our local college. It later turned out that the fiancé, who continued to appear at games and practices with the flag twirlers, had heard something about his targeting me from those girls. I hadn't known how obvious his attention was, but rumors had been flying. So much so that barely anyone questioned the reason for his sudden absence. From what I understand, she initially stayed with him, but the engagement was eventually broken, and she really never looked me directly in the eye after that day. All that to say this, it frightens me to remember how casually other teenage girls responded to their witnessing his behavior towards me. Some girls even showed hints of envy or jealousy, which makes me so sad to remember. Some teenage girls can become so desensitized to the inappropriate attentions and advances of boys and men. They giggle and joke and relate to the creeped out feelings, sometimes missing these subtle red flags that indicate a situation is becoming dangerous. If my sister had not given me a safe space to say how he really made me feel, who knows how much further that situation would have escalated. I hope you all already talked to the teenage girls in your life. Be their safe person, with no judgment if you can. If you made it this far, thank you for reading. This felt like a cleansing purge. My sister is my hero for saving me and probably ruining that dude's college career. I was 15 and had just transferred into a new school. I made a friend immediately, and after a few weeks I asked my mom and she agreed to let me spend the night. I'm not gonna give out my friend's real name, so let's just call her Kelsey. Anyway, I get to Kelsey's place and it's all fun and games. I met her mom, who I absolutely adore, and even managed to make a few jokes with both her parents, even though her dad seemed more partial to grunting. Around 10, we both got sleepy, and since I have horrible memory, I didn't remember to bring something to sleep with. So I borrowed a shirt from Kelsey that went down to my knees. We also slept together in the same bed. I know probably not a good idea to be wearing just a shirt, with understuff of course, to a sleepover, but I trusted my friend, and she was wearing something similar. We both passed out, but I woke up sometime later because I could feel the blanket moving. I turned my head and saw a shadowy figure I could just barely make out to be her dad step back from the bed and drop the blanket. I blinked in his direction like twice and then instantly fell asleep again. Dumb, I know, but I was dead tired and too sleepy to be properly alarmed. I felt the same thing after I fell asleep again. And this time I didn't move around too much as I looked and verified that, yes, that was my friend's father, and that he was lifting the blanket of the side I was sleeping on. My thighs were exposed because the shirt had ridden up when I slept, and I sat up, scaring him away from the blanket again. Yeah, it took it happening twice, but I finally caught on to what was going on, and to say I was scared was an understatement. I had a lot of crap going through my mind of potential horrible ways that could have ended. I made sure the blanket was around my legs and still acted sleepy because I didn't want him to know how aware I was. He moved away from the foot of the bed and stood by the TV, telling me some BS story that he was just there to turn it down or whatever. I just went with it. He stood there for like 3 minutes, just looking back to see if I would lay down again. If I was even thinking about it, the fact that he was waiting on it would have stopped me. Thankfully, he left the room, and I grabbed my phone and tried my hardest to call my parents. They didn't answer because it was like 3 a.m. As I was trying to reach them, though, I noticed that he never really left the hallway bathroom space in front of Kelsey's door. He was still waiting for me to fall back asleep, and as such, poked his head into the room every few minutes. At that point, I felt sick. I was the most terrified I'd ever been in my life because I suddenly realized that we were the only two awake in the house. I went on Sham Chat just to contact people and not feel so isolated. I could have woke Kelsey, but I didn't. I was too scared. and I didn't want to lose my first friend, so I didn't bother to wake her up. I just stayed on my phone all night until she woke up, and I made her come with me to the bathroom because I was so nervous. If you're curious, I did eventually tell her what happened. She begged me to tell her mom, and I did, even though I didn't want to. She then came home with me and refused to leave until I told my mom. Together, they managed to get him out of the house, and Kelsey is still one of my closest friends to this day. And I'm immensely grateful of the fact that I'm a light sleeper. The only thing that woke me up those 2 times was because I could feel the blanket being lifted. It was such a small thing, but I'm so freaking lucky that it woke me up. He could have done a lot worse than look if it wasn't for that.